Greetings, fellas, gals, and theys that may be interested, and to those of you that aren't interested but still watching and hopefully will show up in the comments later, thank you for that as well. I would like to talk to you about something that happened to me on February 1st of this year, which is still 2023, I think. I was in San Jose, California. I had just got off of the freeway, and by the freeway I think I mean 101, possibly. I'm really good at this. Do you like exact details or do you like vague details when I tell a story? You tell me. But I was getting off of the freeway to make a delivery. I was hauling roofing shingles, right? So I'm going to like one of these building supply places, but it's kind of in a tight part of town where there's not a lot of room. And the way that you have to get there from the freeway is a little bit odd. I had to get off onto an arterial road and then take like a side street to the east back to another arterial road that I couldn't access from the freeway. And then my delivery was off another side street off that arterial road. So I was going down a side street and I needed to turn left, or for the Boy Scouts among you, north, on this street that was called the Lincoln Avenue, I believe it was called. I can fact check myself later and edit this out, but I probably won't because I'm lazy and everything. But let's just say it was called Lincoln Avenue. Who cares? So I had to make this left-hand turn to the north, right? So I stop at a stop sign, which I have been known to do because I'm a gosh darn professional driver. I stop, I clear the intersection. I mean, the lanes that are moving to the south or coming at me from the left, going past me on the right. I clear those lanes. I pull out into those lanes because I didn't have good vision because of like shrubs and vegetation and parked vehicles on the street. So I pulled out a little bit into the lanes that were clear so that I could get a good view of the northbound lanes, the ones that were coming from my right, going past me on the left. And I was sitting there waiting for traffic to clear, and some of that traffic, they collided in front of me. Like there was 3 vehicles and they all got tangled up together nicely. They were probably going like 25, 30 miles an hour. I don't think that anyone was in fear of like losing life or limb. That's a car. Do you like that for the audio? But anyways, this collision happened and there was pieces of like car and stuff in the road. But then as soon as it happened, they fled, they left, and all was fine, I guess, except there was little pieces of car in the road. And I made a mental note to myself, and the note said as follows: that was interesting. And then I went on about my day. I completed this left-hand turn to the north on Lincoln Avenue, and then I had to make a right-hand turn onto another side street to go down and make my delivery at this like building supply place. And as fate would have it, out of pure serendipity, all 3 of those vehicles that were involved in the accident were all staged up doing their insurance information exchange deal there right in front of the place that I am delivering to. And I made another mental note to myself, and it said as follows: first of all, I really have to pee. I hope there's a bathroom here. And then underneath that line item of the note, it said, it's really weird that I saw that accident and now all 3 of those cars are here. And then the third thing was, oh my gosh, one of those cars that it was involved in that accident is now blocking my entrance into the facility that I need to deliver this freight to. And before I could ponder that third line item of my mental note that much to myself, I went back up to the first item, which was I have to pee. So I took my paperwork, my bills o lady, and I walked into the office and I said, hello, I am here to make a delivery. I have roofing shingles, and that's them outside. And they were like, that is awesome. And I was like, may I please use your restroom? And then she said, well, the restroom's blah, blah, blah place. And I realized I wasn't gonna be able to use the restroom then because I need to get my truck off the street. So I abandoned the need to urinate and I went back to doing my job. Did you hear that, employer, if you might be watching? I put your needs above that of my own, like, renal and urinary system. So you don't have to, like, give me anything for that or whatever. It's just, you know, I'm a professional. So I went back out to the truck, but then I told this person, one of these people that was involved in the accident, that are all out there now with like pens and paper and crap, exchanging information. I said, hey man, I need to turn in here to deliver this load. Is there any way you could move your car? And then right as I was, before I could like finish up this very brief conversation with this fella, here comes this gal. And this gal, she's involved in the accident too. She's in from one of them vehicles that was in the accident. And she comes over to me and quite assertively says to me, did you see this accident? And I said, yeah, actually I did, you know. And she was like, well, I think you were involved. And I was like, oh, really? And she was like, yeah, I think that what you were doing wasn't correct. Or I forget how she phrased it, but she phrased it in a weird way like that. And I said, okay. And she was like, the police are on their way. I've called the police. And I said, word, you know. And I said, well, I need to go in here and deliver these shingles because there's a supply chain crisis. I didn't say that. It would have been a cool plug for the brand and everything, but I was just like, hey, I got to go in and, like, I'm not going anywhere, is what I told her. Like, you're blocking the entrance, or you're staged up at the entrance. I have to go right back there, deliver this freight. But, you know, by all means, when law enforcement gets here, like, I'll speak with them or what have you. And because in my mind, I was like, there's no way I was involved in that accident. And there's like, as far as I'm concerned, you can go fly a gosh darn kite because I'm not giving you any of my information. But I didn't say any of that because I'm a polite person and I wanted to de-escalate, and she wanted to accelerate or escalate. Yeah, escalate is the opposite of de-escalate. Wow, that was hard to figure out. But anyway, she wanted to Cadillac escalate that right on up to like an altercation. And I'm clearly, well, not clearly, because obviously I have been blessed with this monstrous, very intimidating physique, and people might assume that because of my very intimidating presence that I'm a person that enjoys altercations. But despite my very, very manly appearance, inside of me exists what could be best described as like a little girl. I am a lover, not a fighter. So I de-escalated. Where am I going with this? Please rate my storytelling abilities in the comment section. So I go in, and it's a really tight turn, by the way, and there was 3 vehicles involved in this accident. Now they're all there out of pure luck at the place I'm trying to deliver, and one of them is set up in such a way that it's like really interfering with my ability to turn, and I came within inches of their bumper. I had to get out a couple of times to make sure that I didn't hit it. Getting out and looking, by the way, is something that I do as a professional driver occasionally. So I got in there, I got all set up, and then I sacrificed video footage. I could have done one of my cool little voiceover deals, like delivering that freight, but I didn't because I called Lori. And Lori is like my direct supervisor. She's my, what our company calls driver coach. And I called her and I said, and she said, Mr. Barrymore. And I was like, yeah, I'm having a problem. And then I explained to her the situation, hopefully more succinctly than I just explained it to you guys, but I explained it nonetheless. And she said, that's really weird. And I was like, yeah. And then I asked her to go about ordering the footage from our company dash cam, you know? And she said she would. And that was awesome. And then I was kicking myself at that moment. I was like, my windshield had been replaced a couple months ago, and I haven't set up my personal dash cam since then. I haven't remounted it to my windshield and everything. So I was like, oh, I wish I would have had my personal one, because it's super easy to, I have a Bluetooth link to it and everything. I can get the footage in like seconds. But I didn't really worry too much at this point. I was just like, this is weird, the cops will show up and everything will be fine. Well, I got all my straps and undone. I got my view boards down. I finally took care of the first line item of my mental note from when I first pulled into the place, which was that I definitely had to urinate. So I went and I peed. And as I was coming back from peeing, this one gal was in this accident, she's like outside the fence of this place that I'm delivering, but like sort of yelling into me. She was like, I need your driver's license. And I said, are the cops on the way? And she said, I've called the cops, they are coming. And I said, well, we'll deal with it when they get here. I have to get unloaded, So I go back and I'm waiting around for a little bit for them to get me unloaded, but it was taking them a while because they had other things going on, as they are apt to do when you go to make a delivery somewhere. And then all of a sudden, all three of these people, they come back there. The gal that was the one that I said was very assertive and confrontational, and then the two fellas that were involved, they came back. The two fellas, they were pretty mild mannered, because what happened is like, she was quite clearly at fault for the accident, but they were waiting on her and everything to figure out, because obviously it was going to be like her prerogative to, like, or her insurance company was going to be liable for the damages to their vehicles, so they needed to get it sorted out. But she was like taking the lead, and so she came over and she was like, do you have your information? You were involved in this accident. And I said, well, when the police get here, we'll take care of all that. And then she pulls out her phone, and that made me feel some kind of way, because she said, I'm gonna film this. And I said, word, that's totally fine. Do whatever you feel necessary. And because de-escalation, like I said. But when she pulled that out and she started filming, and she wasn't even being steady, or I was like, do you know who I am? I know how to film things, with the old smartphone. But she didn't care. And I didn't say that. I just thought that because I don't want to be confrontational at all. But I thought it was weird that she was trying to out-film me, And I was like, that's fine. And then she tried to open the door to my truck and like get inside or something. And you guys would be so proud of me to know that when I parked the truck there and I got out, I made a point of locking the door, because I had this weird feeling in my brain that this gal reminded me of what some people describe as a Karen. And I had the feeling that I was not going to be secure in my person's property, papers, and effects, or whatever they say in the old Giving Tree book, or wherever that's from. Yeah, so I was like, okay. And I told him, I said, hey, look, when the police get here, we can do whatever we need to do to figure this out. Until then, I kind of need to get this taken care of. I have a job to do, but I'm clearly, like, for all intents and purposes, like, detained here. I can't leave without going past you guys, so you'll know if I go anywhere. I've got this big truck and everything, the one that you say is involved in the accident. And so I just got unloaded, and then as I was getting unloaded, the manager of this place like kind of comes out and is like wondering what's happening with these people, and finally they had to leave. Like, they didn't even have any PPE on or anything for this yard. They walked back out to the front where there was, and I explained to the manager, I said, hey, this is what's happening. And he kind of laughed, and he looked at my truck and he said, where's the damage on your truck if you were involved in this accident? And I was like, I know, right? It's crazy. And so, but this point, it's like this accident, so-called, that I was involved in, that I actually wasn't involved in, it happened at like 2 p.m. And by this point, it's like almost 4 p.m., I think. And, or it's a little after 3 or something like that. There's no police. There's all three of those people outside still waiting for me. And then I found out that they closed the gates at 5. And I was getting a little concerned because I don't have anywhere to go. And I'm tempted just to leave because I wasn't involved in this accident. So I call my Lori back, my supervisor, and I said, hey, what should I do? And she was like, well, I don't really think you should leave. just in case they try to go crazy and say like you're fleeing the scene of an accident or whatever. And I was like, word. And then what I did is she advised me to try to call the cops myself. So I did. I called 911 and I said, hey, there's been an accident that I have nothing to do with, that 3 other parties were involved with, but they've informed me that they've called the police on me, and I'm wondering what my obligations are. And then she was like, let me transfer you to dispatch. And then like 40 minutes of elevator music later or whatever, because that's how long it took to get a hold of a real person, they were like, we don't have any report of this accident. So I don't know what they were doing. I don't know if they actually called the cops or what their deal was, but I told the dispatch what was happening, and she said, we'll send an officer out right away. And I was like, okay. Well, now it's getting really close to 5 by the time they show up. And like, I actually talked to the people at the facility, and they said, you can stay in this yard, just lock the gates up when you go out. And I'm like, okay, no problem. Well, all of a sudden now, there's not just 3 people that were originally involved in this accident. Now there's like 5 people standing out in front of the thing, like waiting for the cops and for me and everything. And I'm like, what is going on? This is crazy. And so I'm just trying to hang out in my truck. I don't want to interact with them. I don't want to give them any info. So I'm just chilling in the truck, trying to stay out of their way. They occasionally, like mostly this one gal is like occasionally screaming at me. I think this was about the point that she called my company and demanded the video, like demanded them do something about it. And then another guy at work mentioned to them that we have a camera. So then she came to me and was demanding me to give her camera footage. And I told her again, like, hey, when the cops get here, we'll figure everything out. And she said, oh, well, you're very helpful. And then she said, you're gonna pay. You're gonna pay, mister. And I was like, oh, word, you know? And just let her go on her way. Now it's this weird cluster because there's like 5 people now when there was originally 3. I think this was about the time that Uber Eats shows up. Like they're making a picnic out of the thing, you know? They're ordering food now. I'm like, good grief. Because I kind of had a thought, maybe I can wait these fellas out, you know, and gals and maybe theys. Maybe I can wait all of them out. But no, they ordered food, you know? And they drove from the place where this accident happened. They drove to this spot. But now, right about the time as the police finally show up, now there's tow trucks on scene. Now these are like disabled vehicles that are incapable of moving out of nowhere. And the people that work at this business, they're trying to leave. There's these 3 cars that are like disabled in their way. It's like this huge cluster. Finally, the police come. And then like one of the officers comes to me and asks me what's going on. I talk to her. And I tell her the situation. You know, another officer is talking to the other 3 parties. And then there's like this confluence that happens. Those 2 officers get together. Well, apparently there was a very small superficial scratch on the left side of my truck. Not even on the truck itself, on the cattle guard or deer guard or bumper guard, whatever you call it, that's on the front of our trucks. There was a superficial small scratch. And apparently that lady had claimed that that was the damage on my vehicle from me being physically involved in this accident. And I was thinking, what in the gosh darn heck? There's no way. And I told the officer, I said, hey, that's on the left side of my truck. So if this accident occurred as I'm waiting to make a left-hand turn, how is it even physically possible that any damage from someone coming from my right at any point in me making a left-hand turn would occur on the left side of my vehicle? And they said, yeah, that is strange, but since we don't have any evidence to the contrary, you know, now you're involved in this accident. And about this time, I'm trying to coordinate with my work to get the footage. Well, the footage they got was a clip that started right after the accident happened, like 6 seconds or so after the accident happened. And I wasn't able to get them to send me the footage from the actual accident until the following day. So the police ended up having to make a report as though I was involved in this accident because they didn't have any evidence to prove definitively that I was not. So they leave. by this time, the vehicles have been towed away. The cops and me are the last ones talking. I finally am able to leave. I missed my reload for that afternoon because of this whole commotion. Left on my way. I ended up having to call in the next day to the San Jose Police Department. I think it took me about an hour to finally get a hold of someone. When the officers were on scene with me, they gave me a card that also had their information, but then they also sent me a text message with a link that I could upload evidence for the case file. So I uploaded the footage of the accident itself to show that I wasn't involved. They said though that unfortunately the report had already been filed. They're unable to amend a report once it has been filed. But they said when the insurance company, you know, inevitably calls, their insurance companies are going to call and ask for a police report. We're going to give them this report, but we will also forward along the video that you sent us as like an attachment. So I was thinking, well, that's great, because if anybody in their right mind sees the video footage of the incident, they're going to realize that I wasn't involved whatsoever. So I worked it all out with my work. I contacted the police the next day. I got them the footage. I talked to my work. And as it stands right now, there is like an insurance thing happening, but my employer is very confident that that footage will clear everything up. And if it does not, there may be some reason that I may need to like make a statement for the insurance process. But for all intents and purposes, it's a non-issue, because we have sufficiently proved that this vehicle had no part in that accident whatsoever. But it was truthfully one of the strangest things that's ever happened to me in my truck driving career, in that I was like, this lady saw my truck, and it just like by sheer coincidence that they all three decided to do their insurance information exchange at the same exact spot that I have to deliver, of all the places they could have gone in a radius of where this accident occurred. And I think what happened was I think this lady recognized full well that she was at fault. And the video clearly shows that the one lady that was the most aggressive with me, 100% without question, undoubtedly at fault for this accident. The other two vehicles collided because of her actions. And I think she knew that. And I think she saw Central Oregon Truck Company and she was like, oh, now they're gonna pay. And she was real committed to that story that I was involved. And I gotta give it to her, because I've always maintained, if I can respect anything, it's commitment to the bit. And she was committed to the bit of falsely accusing me of creating or causing or being involved in a traffic accident that I had nothing to do with. And one funny anecdote, now that we're 22 minutes into this video, do you care about another 40 seconds? Regardless, something that happened during this encounter is one of the fellas that was involved in this accident, he comes up to me and he says to me, so do I call your insurance company about the tow bill? And I told him, you can call whoever you want to, man. And he said, well, do you have like a credit card? And I was thinking, good Lord, he actually thinks that I'm gonna pay for his tow bill as a result of him being in an accident that I had nothing to do with. So I told him, I have several credit cards, man, but I don't really think that I have any obligation to pay for anything, seeing as I am driving a vehicle that is completely unmolested. I intend to drive this vehicle away from the scene. What you do with your vehicle is of your own accord, you know? And he was like, oh, okay. And he's all confused and walked away. And I'm like, why are we calling tow trucks out for 3 vehicles that drove away from the accident in the first place? I truly do not understand, but I'll tell you what, that whole situation had me so frazzled. And then the next morning, I got loaded overweight for like the 3rd or 4th time in a row that I've been to this specific shipper. I was overweight. And then I was like, they don't have a scale on site. They don't trust my scales on my trailer. They say you got to go get a scale ticket and come back. The nearest scale on route for me was like a long ways away. And I was so frustrated. And I called one of the bosses at work and I said, I'm having a mental breakdown. because of all the things that have happened to me this week, up to and including being falsely accused of an accident I had nothing to do with, spending the night in Compton the night before that, spending the night next to the train tracks in Antioch, California last night, and now getting loaded heavily without them willing to adjust me, even though I know that means that when I get up to Dunnigan, I'm going to be moving sheetrock around and then retarping this load or whatever. And he said, they're there. And also, like, that's a lot of things to bring up at once. And then he, like, brought up very concise, like, reasonable things that I could do to mitigate all of the issues that I brought up. And I said, are you not hearing me? I'm trying to have a mental breakdown. I'm not looking for solutions. I'm looking to bitch at you for no reason. And he didn't appreciate that, which was weird. And then I said, I just want to go home. You know, like Dorothy. And I clicked my heels and everything. And then he was like, then go home after you get loaded. And I was like, okay, I will. And then he said, are we good? And I was like, yeah, you've actually solved every issue that I brought up, like, really quickly and efficiently. But that makes me even more angry because I was really committed to the bit of having a nervous breakdown in Antioch, California. And now I can't because everything is fine. And he understood because he knows me pretty good. And he knows that despite, like I mentioned before, my very, very manly appearance and demeanor, he knows that I am a hysterical small child. And he knows how to manage me. So, anyways, this is a 26-minute story about how I saw an accident happen and then some Karen lady, gal, they thing accused me of being involved and or causing that accident, and how everything actually just worked out perfectly fine. And even though there's no real issue, I decided to use it as an excuse to have a nervous breakdown. That about clears it up. Thanks for watching.